Many of you know that the Newark History Society started 24 years ago. A few of us started it. We have put on more than 100 public programs, all free, on different topics related to Newark and Newarkers. And this one tonight is really special. We have Anthony DePalma, the author of On This Ground. I hope you've got a copy. It's a very good read. With a New York Times reporter for many years, both on the international and domestic desk, but also the Metro desk. Those of us who have been around Newark a while remember his byline in the New York Times about Newark stories. Anthony will be having a conversation with Father Ed, Father Evan Leahy, a 1963 graduate of St. Benedict's, named headmaster 10 years later, even before the school reopened. And with Mark COMESAñAS, who's over here, who's the executive director of My Brother's Keeper, Newark, a 1998 graduate of St. Benedict's and the father of two students at St. Benedict's, one who graduated last year and one who's graduating this year. There will be a conversation. I think, Anthony, you'll be willing to sign some books afterwards for those who couldn't. If any of you want to hear about future Newark History Society events and are not on our list, there are flyers on the food table. Just send us your email information and we'll get you on the list. And we would, as Katie said, love to see you again on April 14th when Rob Steinbaum from Rutgers Law School and George Robb from William Patterson University, at least a couple years ago, are going to be talking about pioneering Newark women lawyers. So Anthony, let's get started. And you want Mark and Father Ed now.
Are these on? Yes, they are. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out so soon after a blizzard when, yeah, I know, but it's still out there. So thank you all for coming out. And thank you to the Historical Society and to the library. I've been in this building many times and up in the New Jersey room when Charles Cummings was there, and then all of the people who worked with him have helped me in so many ways and so many stories, including at the very beginning of this one as well. So thank you all for that. So the format is going to be basically a conversation with Mark and with Father Ed. Everybody's got a mic. I don't have control over it, so we're going to have to see how that goes. But I thought I would start by answering the two questions I always get about the book right off the bat, and so we can get that out of the way and move on. I did not graduate from St. Benedict's. I did not attend St. Benedict's, but I did attend a Catholic boys' high school in West New York. When I learned about St. Benedict's Prep, it was way back in 1980. I was just starting out as a reporter. I knew immediately that it was a great story. It had all the journalistic elements of a great story that at that point was largely untold. I recognized the tragedy of Newark, and the more I learned about the history of Newark Abbey and the determination of the monks to stand fast where they had been for 100 years already, the more determined I was to tell the story. First article I wrote about St. Benedict's was in 1981 in the New York Times. Several others followed, also in the Times. My first attempt at a book was in 2001. It would have been my second book. 20 years later, I tried again. Father Ed and Paul Thornton, who's here tonight, were there in 1981, were there in 2001, and they are still there. You know, I realize, Father Ed, that you've been headmaster as long as I've been in journalism. Same thing. And I remember you saying when you start out, you never think about doing anything for 50 years. And that's absolutely, absolutely true. They were still there, as were many others, confirming my conviction to tell this story. By the time I got down to writing the book, after getting the permissions and the approvals and doing all the reporting and meeting all of the people and sitting down to write it, I realized that the story of the monks, the story of the school, the story of the staff and the kids and their families and the city, all of that together that I put in the book would be a real antidote for this current moment of inflamed division in our country. How do we get through these days? Well, look at what's in the book, is my answer. The second question I often get, because the title of the book is On This Ground, Hardship and Hope at the Toughest Prep School in America. It's pretty obvious. What makes it so tough? Well, that's the story of the book. But I guess you can boil it down to it being a school that refused to die in a city that almost did. And the result is what you've got today. So let me put that into a little bit of context. Both Newark and St. Benedict's were racing towards a crisis in the 1960s. Conditions in the city pushed Newark into the rebellion of 1967, followed by an accelerated decline, loss of businesses, residents, and even a sense of the city's own community. In the same period, Catholic school enrollment began its very steep decline, eventually plummeting over 70% from more than 5 million kids who were in school when I was in Catholic school, and you were, to today, less than 2 million, 1.7. The number of Catholic schools has also dropped by more than half, from 13,000 in the country to now around 6,000. We all know schools that closed here in Newark and elsewhere, including my own. We know of schools that closed, Catholic schools that closed and reopened as charters. And we know of Catholic schools that consolidated with others as they went out of business. But I know and have only found one Catholic school that closed and then reimagined itself and reopened in the same place. I think you'll all agree that you've got to be pretty tough to do that and maybe a little crazy. So, Father Ed, I'd like to start with you by asking you to take us back to those earliest days of the school. 1972 was a pretty bad year for Newark, maybe the worst. The Newark News went belly up in 1972. Ballantine Beer shut down, 3,000 people out of work. The railroads all were bankrupt, and the flight to the suburbs had accelerated, taking residents, businesses, and institutions, including St. Benedict's. Unbelievably, a year after that, you guys open up the school with just 89 boys in the same place where a school had just failed and closed. You admitted to me several times that you and Paul and the others didn't really have much of a plan of how you were going to do this. And given the situation that that existed when you started, there must have been a moment when you doubted that it was going to work. Tell us what it was.
So I have a question. Good evening, everyone. I have a question. Why did you say and have to be crazy and then say Father Ed right after that? Did I? No, I don't think. I think I was too, I don't know, naive, ignorant. When I applied to St. Benedict's Prep, I didn't get in. So I may have been too stupid at the time. I mean, did I ever doubt that we could do something? No, I didn't. I never did. Because people say this all the time, and it's, it's either not true or needs to be nuanced more, is that we were so determined to stay there. Well, we'd taken a vow of stability, 14 men left, admittedly, right? But we were there in the community, essentially the African-American community then, because the West African immigration didn't happen until later. The African-American community, I don't know why, but wrapped its arms around us and loved us into another way of seeing the world. So it wasn't great that we stayed and we were going to do things for the people. The people of Newark loved us into a different way of seeing things. And therefore, that wasn't a big problem for me, because we just going to live this together and see where it took us.
Well, of course, that faith has a lot to do with it, but anyone who's run a business, and there are lots of people here who have done that, would never expect the business to just go from start, to success without any fallbacks, without any points when things just didn't go as planned.
Yeah, that's
I mean, you had enrollment from the beginning, enough money from the beginning. Where did
we never. That's why when you use a model of business, this thing made no sense from day one. Anybody that's in business and looked at our numbers, they say, there's no way this is going to work. But I mean, I don't dress the way I do in the monastery for nothing. There's something else beyond us involved in this effort. Just like the Hebrews were led out of slavery in Egypt, right? Well, that same process continues to go on, and walking together in faith is what made St. Benedict's. Almost nothing was planned, nothing, zero. I mean, we just tried to respond to the pushes and nudges that we've gotten over the years from the community.
Could the St. Benedicts that exist today have come about if the original St. Benedict's hadn't closed and forced you to reimagine what a school could be?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the motivations you asked me about, would I ever doubt, because I was too angry to doubt back then, and I wanted to prove to the 14 men that I lived with, some of whom taught me when I was a kid at school, who left to go to Del Barton out in Morris County, which we had founded in 1927. I just wanted to stick it right in their ear because the argument, the school closed. What every Catholic school in the country says it closes because of declining numbers and insufficient funds. St. Benedict's Prep closed because of racism, period, the end. That's why it closed. And the racism even crept into the monastery. And as long as you were Italian and got thrown out of Barringer, and your parents brought you to Benedict's because the monks would try to get you in line, that nobody questioned standards. The minute black people came, it's not the same. Standards are dropping. That was the argument that was being made. And even some of the monks began to believe that. So there was no way that was not my experience of the early guys that came because of Father Benedict. So prior to 72, Father Benedict was saving money and then paying for kids to come from 7th Avenue Junior High, Webster Junior High, all those places, because he linked up with guidance counselors at those places. So the numbers of African-American kids was growing in the school, and this was only a couple of years post uprising, and people got, oh no, it's not the same. The standards are dropping, and so I was angry, and we're just gonna. I was polite. I said, "Stick it in their ear. I want to shove it down their throat." Is what I wanted to do, to prove to them that they were wrong. Right? That's not true. But and then at the same time, the community loved us, right? Loved us, and they could have. The African-American community in Newark at that time could have pushed us right out of Newark. We were a group of white guys. After 5 o'clock at night, the only white guys anywhere near that part of town was us. Right? So They could have made it uncomfortable, but they didn't even come close to that. We experienced another way of seeing the world because of the arms being wrapped around us by the African-American community and the Puerto Rican community, right? Because the Latin American immigration happened in great numbers, happened after the West African immigration in the 80s. That pretty accurate, Doc?
So another aspect of toughness comes from the students themselves, right? Who come from families that have had a hard time and need to step up. By the mid-1990s, when you entered the school, Benedicts already had achieved some success, right? But what was Newark like then for you living there? And I'm curious, what kind of attitude adjustment did it take for you, a tough Newark kid, to fit into the St. Benedict's community?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'm compelled to say that I'm humbled to be sitting here. There are hundreds of men and now young women that Benedict's has served. And so I need to call out that it is not lost on me that I have the opportunity to speak really on their behalf, because any number of them could be sitting here right now. So that's the first thing. The second thing I will say is that, Newark was all the things Newark is unfortunately still known for, right? And infamous for. I remember Halsey Street specifically, and I tell my kids this. I mean, the Halsey Street that we see today with a Whole Foods, and I mean, there was nothing there. It was desolate. There was no reason to be on Halsey Street in the 90s. And that was not true just in the 90s. That was, towards the tail end of what was happening on Halsey Street. I want to spend less time, though, talking about that Newark and really highlight the other Newark that I was growing up in, which included, my grandmother living on Mount Prospect upstairs from Caballo Blanco, which was a bodega where families, hung out and talked. Walking to the light rail to get to school, I would pass, he wasn't a doctor then, but Dr. Cassidy and Mark Onion, who were staff at the school. And they lived 2 blocks from my house. So they knew if I was going to be on time for school or not, depending on when they met me at the light rail. Seeing my guidance counselor at the time, he also wasn't a doctor at that time, but Dr. Lamort. It was the first time that a man of color like Dr. Lamort was my guidance counselor and Mark Onion, a Black man, was my teacher. It was the first time I had seen that as a young man growing up in the city. And so as tough as it was, there was also community and a thriving community, a community where people knew each other, neighbors knew each other. You couldn't do something because your mother would find out before you got home that you did X, Y, or Z. And so, that Newark was just as real in my life as the one where you had to, walk with your hands balled up just in case, because you never knew, right? And I remember my senior year when we got our senior rings. I remember not wearing it because, you get caught with jewelry or something, it just caused problems, right? And so that Newark was real. But there was also a Newark that was filled with a lot of just resources and just relationships and network that I think it's important to lift up. And I got waitlisted also, so I didn't get into St. Benedict's. So I didn't get in initially. So we're just as stupid, maybe. But getting to St. Benedict's, I remember doing the overnight. I got in the car when my mom picked me up and I said, I am never walking into this place again. I am done. I had gotten into science high school. I was like, why am I putting myself through this? And my mom was like, it's cute that a 14-year-old thinks they can make decisions around here. And so I showed back up for school on Monday and kind of had to just tough it out because there really wasn't a choice at 14. And I think there was something that my son said, and I'll wrap up with this. My oldest son, who graduated from Benedicts in 22, Father Ed said something, it was convocation, I think, or there was a video, and my son Jordan says, I can't stand Father Ed. And I said, why? And he said, because he just said something that is so true. He said, you don't appreciate this place until you're gone and you realize all that it has sown inside of you. And it's not until, he didn't say it this way necessarily, but it's not until those seeds start to germinate and flourish and blossom that you realize, oh, this place has left an indelible mark in my life. And like for my son Jordan, I didn't realize that probably until I had already graduated.
Interesting. Let's talk about the kids for a minute. As the father of two, one who's already gone through, one who's just finishing up now, how do you feel about what the school puts students through? From, I mean, for those of you who don't know, it's a year-long schedule. Daily convocation at 8 o'clock. Everybody is expected to be there, and attendance is usually around 95, 97% of everybody shows up. Self-examination and things like stage rage and unknown sons. The honor code, the Appalachian Trail, which I know how tough that is because I did it with them. And the first time I did it was in 1981. And by the time we got to the end of it, I was keeping up with the kids and they said, not bad for an old guy. By the time I did it in 2024, they were gone and practically finished a day before I did. But I finished. And as you said, it's the only course where if you don't finish, you don't get anything. You get left out in the woods. The AT trail for 14-year-olds who've never been out in the woods is pretty tough. And then now you've got the water adversity challenge that I've seen make some parents squint their eyes and turn because their sons and daughters are forced to jump into the deep end of the pool, fully clothed and blindfolded. Is it too tough?
I mean, I don't have to do the water challenge, so no, it's not too tough. It's listening to you, Father Ed, talk about the decision to stay at the school. It makes me think about, so when Jesus is with the disciples and it's the first communion, and he says, he who eats this bread eats my flesh, he who drinks this wine drinks my blood. The scripture says that some of the disciples hearing that, it says that they got up and walked with him no longer. They heard something that made them go, I have no idea. This makes no sense to me. Like I cannot even comprehend what you're talking about. You've lost your mind, and they decided this is enough. I draw the line here. And the scripture says that Jesus turns to, I believe it's Peter, and says, are you going to leave too? This is the COMESAñas translated version. He basically says, are you going to leave too? And Peter, in essence, what Peter says is, the way I understand it is, I would, but where am I going to go? Like, where else am I going to go if only you have the words of truth? If only you have truth. I've seen too much to turn around now and say, yeah, I'm done. I've seen too much. I've seen you heal the blind. I've seen you heal the lame. I've seen you do all of these things. I don't understand what it is you're talking about now, but I'm still going to follow. And I think it's a fitting analogy for what you're asking, because I don't know why you should put black goggles on a 15-year-old and put him in a coat and push him into 12 feet of water. If you asked me to tell you the research on it, I can't. You know who else probably can't? Father Ed probably can't either. However, I've seen too much to say it's time to turn around now. It's just, I've seen too many of the miracles happen that make me say, push them into the water. Because I trust that that guidance, the same thing that kept Father Ed and Father Albert and others there in 73 and 83 and 93 and 03 and 13 and 23. I trust that that same thing, even if I don't understand it, is coming from the same place where the things that came in 94, 95, 96, et cetera, for me, I didn't understand it until it was much later. And so I don't think it's too tough. I think they're doing exactly what they need to do. I trust what it is that they're doing. I guarantee you that the young men who are there have no idea why they're doing it and what it means and why is it important, but I also trust that they will.
So you tell he's the son of a preacher.
I'm here between two preachers. Oh, boy. So why do it?
Well, why do it is what we learned, right? When the community wrapped its arms around us and taught us how to live a different kind of life. Well, the most important thing that we've destroyed in this country right now is the sense of community, the sense of being able to, I heard this story in Israel. Two Jews are talking to each other. One says to the other, Irv, do you love me? And Irv said, yeah, you know I love you. He said, do you know my suffering? He said, no, I don't know your suffering. Then how can you say you love me? So the secret is to understand the reality of the other and then understand the suffering of the other. And that's how you build a sense of community, which we can't do now. Right? No ability in this country to understand the reality or the sufferings in Kansas or the sufferings in southern Georgia. And that we try to work it out. That's why we meet every single morning. The most important thing that happens at St. Benedict's Prep is convocation. Every morning we all get together because in order to be community, the community has to see itself. It has to see itself. It can't be just an imaginary thing. So we meet every single morning. We do attendance together so that anybody's not there, their name gets called out. Somebody else in the community knows where they are. They have an obligation to say that, to tell us. So and then these other activities that happen are ways of learning how to depend on one another. So walking the Appalachian Trail. I'll give you an example. One of our teachers, his father died 2 years ago. His younger brother graduated with us as well. I went to the viewing. As I was arriving at the viewing, the younger brother came out and he said, Father Ed, you just missed my trail group. He had walked the Appalachian Trail probably 15 or 17 years before. But the guys that he walked it with came to the viewing. It wasn't his algebra class or his chemistry class. It was the guys that walked the trail with him. There are people in the room tonight that walked the trail back in the 80s. Can still name everybody they walked it with. I bet you Dr. Johnson can name the guys he walked it with. So membership in the community. In fact, one of the things, Dr. Johnson's sitting over here, professor at St. Peter's University, one of the things he and Dr. Cassidy taught me was the sense of membership at St. Benedict's Prep has nothing to do with a diploma. Zero. In the African-American community, the connectedness that comes from togetherness is what happens in the school. So we have guys, I know a guy that spent 38 years in state prison for being involved in a murder. He comes to every reunion we have in Atlanta. He was there 1 year in 1973-74, the only year he was there. But he identifies as a Benedict's guy. And I would never recognize that except Dr. Johnson and these guys taught me that the feeling of community is different in the African American and the Latin American world. So that's one of the things we do. And these other challenges are ways of getting our kids to realize that they can compete with anybody. And the reason the water challenge is so important is because our kids, black and brown kids, are 5 times more likely to drown than their white counterparts. So teaching them how to defend themselves in the water is the primary reason for the water challenge.
Do you get much pushback from the parents?
No, actually, I've gotten zero. I've had parents sit in the His parents sit in the gallery of the pool and cry and say to me, I can't swim.
Mhm.
People from island nations sit in the gallery and say, I can't swim. We used to go fishing all the time. I couldn't swim. If I ever fell overboard, I'd be gone. So those kind of challenges, I think, are important. And then there's the one we do out with our 11th graders out in the woods overnight. Go do your homework, COMESAñAS. That we do overnight that's more team oriented. So guys have to, and girls have to depend. Remember, there's girls at the school now. Anthony's probably going to ask me this, but with no plans for girls. The girls broke in. Uninvited. That's the absolute truth. 17 and 18-year-old girls created a scheme with our guys, our leaders at the school at the time. Jaden Forniel's here tonight, was a senior group leader a couple of years ago. That back then, these girls got together with our guys, and they schemed, they concocted this girls' division at the school. And I told them that we didn't have any space and we didn't have any money. And they weren't moved by that argument. And then Mark was talking about the scripture. I mean, what happened was the insight of the Jews was that God is a God of history, the history of a people and our own personal histories. Right? So we didn't have any space. And I'm telling the girls we can't do it because we don't have any space. Pandemic. Space is no longer an issue, right? Because we went virtual. So instead of having a couple months to figure out what to do, we now had 10 months to figure it out. And they continue to push it. And all the women in the group will appreciate this part of the story. It got to the point where I asked one of the, when you get, somebody was here, was at my 80th birthday. When you get to be 80, you don't care what you say anymore. Somebody knows what I'm talking. Somebody in church knows what I'm talking about right now. And so I went to the regional bishop for Union County, and I thought maybe he could intercede for us to be able to use Benedict Academy's building, the school that had just closed, while we were trying to figure this out. So after he got the information, we had a Zoom call. And everybody on the screen except the bishop and me were either black or Latino or Latinas. And the bishop said to these kids and a couple of their parents that, listen, there's no way we can get the school. And besides, this was in April. And besides, it's too late now to start a school in September. So I'm thinking, September? We're starting in July. What are you talking about? And he said to the kids, he said, well, listen, go to the local Catholic schools and take the values that you got at Benedict Academy, and at the end of the year, I'll have a pizza party for you. I thought these women were going to come right through the screen at this guy's throat. And once he said that, I had this same sick feeling again that I said, you know what? Now we're going to have girls, and I'm going to shove it right down this guy's throat.
Crazy. It's like I said, it's crazy. Start a school when everybody else is closing schools, going co-institutional when everybody's telling you after 100 years, by then it was 150 years, you can't do it. And where's the money going to come from? Well, you probably turned to Paul, and Paul said, I don't know.
We'll find the money.
We'll find it. We'll find it. Let's talk about community for a little bit more. I know that in the past, there were monks who were born in Newark, who went to St. Benedict's, who then went right into the monastery and continued there. And that formed a nucleus of the community. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. So how is the Abbey, and by relation, the school, going to maintain a sense of community and belonging to the city? Or now you are bringing in guys, but they are coming from outside and they don't have that history. So how does that change things and what do you do about it?
So I just got this, but I didn't do it for tonight, but 60-some% of our kids come from Newark and East Orange and Irvington. 73% come from Essex County. So the influence of it's just like the Middle Ages, although the historians, right? The influence of the Abbey around its immediate surroundings is still pretty significant, right? So we have kids from all over the world now because of the ability to get information off of the internet. Most of those relationships happen also by chance. We have relationships in Israel, 3 different places in Israel among the Jews, the Arabs, a developing one with the Druze up in the Galilee. In Mongolia, we have kids from Mongolia, teachers from Mongolia. I mean, all of which happened seeming by chance. That Mark made me think about it. An image that may be helpful to you is, it says in the book of Exodus that Moses was tending the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro when he encountered a bush that was on fire but not being consumed. And he said, I must go over to investigate. And I always wonder, how many shepherds were in that area that never saw the bush or saw it and said, if that bush is still on fire next week when I come back with the sheep, maybe I'll have time then. I don't have time right now. How many missed the burning bush, right? And it wasn't until Moses made the decision to go investigate that the mystery of the divine spoke to him. So I think the key for us is to be alert for the bush and to be willing to go over and investigate and not be shocked with the assignment. Remember, Moses got told, I want you to go back to Egypt and lead my people out. Well, he just run from Egypt because they were trying to kill him. So the assignments can be difficult, right? How to figure out how to have girls on the property, how to value the girls the same way as the guys, and give them. When the girls came, they said we want to do everything that the guys do. So they do the trail, they do the water challenge. They're out in the woods for 36 hours with Navy SEALs. But I think you have to be alert to the bush. And the most frequently repeated phrase in all of the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures and the so-called the New Testament, is do not be afraid. So when you do this, live together the way we do, you can't be afraid.
I'm not sure you answered the question, but
I didn't want to.
everybody now doesn't have to go to your service on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, because we've already done it. No, I was talking about your community, your community in the monastery. If you don't have that connection to Newark, how will you maintain a relationship to the community?
But there is a relationship to Newark in the sense of the community, because the community goes beyond the people who dress like me. The community that's present there every day, Lamort, all the people that Mark was talking about, they've been there for 30 years, 20 years. So the community of monks, you can catch it. It's a contagious disease. Monasticism is a contagious disease. People can catch it. And so it's beyond the people who dress like me. There's all the other people that are in the building as well, and the kids who catch it. Because all of it, the only thing it's about, folks, I almost said saints, the only thing it's about is community, one another. That's what it's about. It's not about success. People ask about success. I'm not interested in success. I'm not interested in success. Mother Teresa was asked once by a reporter, how do you know you're being successful? She looked at him and she said, I wasn't called to be successful. I was called to be faithful. So being faithful in relationships, faithful to the parents who trusted us with their kids, faithful to our alums, all that. So we don't make any decisions without, when the girls came, the way it happened was once I knew the girls wanted to do it, I said, I can't make that decision. It's not mine, nor is it the monks. When the school closed, I think I told you this. When the school closed, there were big meetings. Everybody wants to have a meeting after an announcement of a school closing. They want to have the meeting. Why didn't you tell us before? Why didn't you tell? We could have raised money, all this stuff, right? And that's what happened at our place. And a meeting one night, somebody stood up and said to Abbot Ambrose Clark, who was the superior of the monastery, said, you can't close our school. And he responded, it's not your school, it's our school, meaning the monks. That tells you all you need to know about why St. Benedict's Prep closed. Because once the monks began to own it, it was the end. It was the death knell. Because it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the city, and it belongs to the people that come to it and who gone to it. So when the girls wanted to come, we have a structure where the kids run the school. So that's dangerous because you've got mentally impaired human beings responsible for running something, right? Because their brains aren't fully developed yet. But what the advantage that we have is you've got 50 years of senior group leaders. Guys who, and now women also were senior group leaders who were responsible for running the school. So the first thing I did, I called a meeting of all the senior group leaders. There had to be, at that time, maybe 43 of them over the years, going all the way back to 1978. And I think I had 38 on the screen to ask them what they thought about the idea of having the girls. Because it wasn't my decision. It was the guys who built the place over years, Mark being among them, right? They're the ones who have to make the decision. I'm just representing them and representing the monks. So the monastic community is way bigger than the 14 of us who live in it every day. We just get charged. We're trying to be faithful on steroids, right? Because we have you all provide us in the city the opportunity to get together 5 times a day to pray, to be able to live inside, but because you can't. You're juggling 3 children or you're juggling 2 jobs. But you give us the opportunity to do that for all of you. That's the purpose of the monastic life. So you can be a monastic while not living with us in the monastery. And I believe that's what's happened.
One of the ways that a school like St. Benedict's influences the community is what happens with the alums and how they give back to the community. Mark, I wanted to ask you that there's a long history of Benedict's graduates getting involved in the city, even becoming mayor, running for office and holding different positions. You're at My Brother's Keeper Network. What does it say that in the 54 years since the school was reimagined, there isn't a St. Benedict's graduate as mayor? And does it matter, or when will it happen?
I think the question about, you said there isn't a Benedict's as mayor, right? So I got a chance a couple weeks ago to listen to Dr. Charles Payne. Dr. Payne is he's become a mentor. He's a historian and a researcher. Was celebrating 30 years of his book, I've Got the Light of Freedom, and it's about the civil rights movement. The thesis, if I may, of that book is this idea that we have oftentimes talked about civil rights movement in the way of the heroes and the champions, the names you would know, right? The Martins and the Malcolms and the names of the Harriet Tubmans. If we believe that transformation, that impact, that power resides in the select few, then we will continuously be looking for someone else to come save us. It's the same DNA. My response is the same DNA of the response that Father Edwin just gave about how does St. Benedict survive? It survives not because of Father Ed. It survives because of the hundreds of young men who carry that ethos, that community forward. And so I would answer the second question of the it was the second, there were three questions. But the second one was, does it even matter? And I would say, I'm not sure it matters that, I'm not sure we need a mayor who graduated from St. Benedict's. I would also, if I may speak on the part of St. Benedict's, to say that that never was the goal. The goal was to develop young men as leaders. And there are plenty of positions of leadership in community that go beyond just sitting in the mayor's office. And so that's, I heard Father Ed say something one time years ago. I think it was in response to the, what does success look like? And Father Ed said, success looks like when I see one of our alum return and introduce me to their son or their daughter. And that resonated for me because I was a senior at St. Benedict's, 17-year-old, when I had my daughter. And when I remember hearing him say that, and it was like, if the goal is for me to be a good father and a good husband, that's enough of a bar to meet, to be a leader in my household. If I become mayor or don't become mayor, I was a good father. I am a good father and a good husband. Right? If I become superintendent, I'm a good father and I am a good husband. If I'm the executive director of my brother's keeper for 10 years or 2 years, I'm a good father and I'm a good husband. And that resonates with me because it is about I'm sorry, I can't help it but preach when I'm sitting, hanging around Father Ed. Right? But my first ministry is my household. And if I am leading in that first calling, then the fruits of what that means and other callings on my life will be evident.
That's a great answer, Mark. That's a great answer. Let's stick with that for a minute and talk about success. In the 2 years that I spent a lot of time at the school, I can't remember once when anyone talked about SAT scores, except maybe for you, denigrating them or saying how unimportant they are. So you're a father, right, of a student there now and one who graduated and is in college. I know he is because I talked to him there. If you don't have that kind of focus on standardized test or some way of measuring how much the kids are learning, which seems to be the focus of every other school everywhere, how do you judge what the kids are learning and whether their education is successful?
Yeah,
And you continue to pay the tuition.
yes. There's 1 month left. But who's counting? Walking here for this event, I was on the phone with a young man who's received what's called I think it's called the Quest Bridge Scholarship to an Ivy League university, who went to another high school, not St. Benedict's. And I've been connected to him through the community. He was reaching out because he went to St. Benedict. He went to college, to this Ivy League university. And after his first semester, he dropped out. And he was calling me because he's trying to figure out, how do I get back? And he made the decision to drop out in December. I'm not coming back to this place in the spring. And there's a part of me that, and this is unfair, I'm going to call out the fact that this is unfair, but there is a part of me that feels that if he had grown up, or at least for 4 years, had gotten the message that Benedict's hates a quitter, maybe he would not have left. Maybe something else would have happened. If he had been in a community where he could have called some brothers and said, I am struggling right now, maybe he would still have that scholarship and still be at that Ivy League university. If he had been able to say, Dr. Lamore, I need counsel on this, maybe. And I say it's unfair because you shouldn't play the what if games. But I would be lying if I didn't say to you that I am literally hanging up from that call as I'm walking in here. I walk into this room and I'm thinking about this young man and thinking, he had the SAT scores. He had the full scholarship. His name was in the paper. They celebrated him. And after one semester, something made him say, I don't belong here. I don't belong in this place. This place is not for me. I can't take it anymore. And I would trade the SAT scores and the straight A's and the article in the paper. I would trade all those things for him to just be able to say that I am Black and I am excellent, because I've seen Black excellence. I've seen other brothers who are doing things that I never thought was imaginable. Success would have been him saying, yeah, Benedicts hates to quit. I'm working currently on my doctorate. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. I said I was a teenage father. This is still one of the hardest things I've ever done, getting this doctorate. And I will be 46 2 weeks from now. The amount of times over the last several years I've said, Benedicts hates a quitter. I'm in my 40s and I'm still reminding myself, Benedicts hates a quitter. That's toughness. That's when you talk about the toughest prep school, that's grittiness, that's resilience. And it's something that our young men show up, quite frankly, to Benedicts with already. What Benedicts allows, I think, us to see, it allowed my sons to see it. And I thought me and my wife did a pretty good job, but Benedicts helped our young men see this, our sons see this, that grittiness and resilience and toughness is not only important on Broad Street and broader market. You're going to need to tap that grittiness and resilience at UPenn and at Harvard and at Rutgers and at NJIT, wherever and at the Fortune 500 company and in politics and. And so for me, the success is the same thing that Father Ed said so long ago. It's just, are you a man? And being a man, my SAT scores, I think I got a 1050. Like, I wasn't that bright. I got waitlisted. I told you, I couldn't even get into Benedicts. Yeah, that's not how I measured the success.
When I set out to do the book, I wanted to have free access to everything and cover whatever it was that was happening in the school. And I did that with the understanding that there's no institution anywhere that's perfect. And I didn't expect St. Benedict's to be perfect either. During the course of the year, some things happened that were unexpected in a way, but were also expected when you've got 700 teenagers who are going to do what teenagers do. The Wall Street Journal did a large review of the book recently, and they mentioned some of those incidents. And I thought, I didn't mind that they did. I minded that they just left it at that and raised the question of whether or not the fact that some of these kids had done things that sort of went against the honor code might have reflected badly on the idea that Benedictine values and character were getting across. And I thought they missed the whole point of including those incidents. The whole point of including it was not that the kids made mistakes. We expect that that's going to happen. It's what happens afterwards and how they deal with it, how their families deal with it, and how the school dealt with it. Which led me to think more about this idea of success. Do you measure success by an SAT score, or how well you can do an algebra problem, or whether you can do a declension in Latin, or do you base success in education on the kind of person you become, the character that's formed there? And I wonder if you would just talk about that for a minute. And then, Ryder, your response to the Wall Street Journal.
You're putting time limits on me now for a minute?
You've got 5 minutes. Because are there questions? Yeah, and there are questions from the audience. So.
I'd much rather myself answer questions, but remember, in our mission, we're trying to overcome a very, very calculated destruction. This is before the girls broke in. A calculated destruction of the African male. In order to maintain slavery, help me, Doc, in order to maintain slavery, we had to destroy the African male. We were great at it. We were great at it. And still suffer as a result of it. So how, I don't measure, guys, my SAT scores, you had what, 1050? If I multiplied my two scores, I wouldn't have gotten a 1050. It has to do with the determination, allowing the determination. We're not teaching resiliency. If you're Black and you have to deal with South 10th Street, South Orange Avenue, Springfield Avenue, you know resiliency. Being able to believe that that resiliency is transferable is the key. That it's transferable to Yale, it's transferable to Princeton, it's transferable to Georgetown or Notre Dame or wherever. That's the thing you have to try to I think, that get the kids to believe. And to do that, you have to put up with a lot. I could give you a perfect example. There's a kid who his behavior was absolutely outrageous. And I dismissed him from school in October of his 10th grade. And he never left. He came in for 2 or 3 days in a row, sat outside my office. And I finally told the leaders, I said, listen, sitting outside my office is not going to get him anywhere. Because I wouldn't talk to him. So the next time I went by my office, he was gone. So the kids took him and pirated him away. And he was in school every day. I threw him out. I expelled him. He was in school every day. And beginning of the following year, I welcomed him back. I said, hey, good to have you back. I'm glad to see you did all right. And he said, oh, it's good to be back, Father Edna. But he never left because his view of the whole thing was, I own the thing as much as you do. How are you going to throw me out? So that is what you try to let come out. We're not simply teaching it, but it's in people that you have to give it an opportunity to flower, I think. And that's what this guy wasn't the easiest guy to deal with when he was growing up, but Dr. Johnson wasn't the easiest guy to deal with when he was growing up. Fournier wasn't the easiest guy to deal with when he was growing up. So there's, I wasn't the easiest guy to deal with when they were growing up. That's what community is. It's just, oh, here he goes again, right? The kids would like to roll their eyes now. What I can do here is you're polite. In school, if I start talking too long, somebody will come up and take the mic away from me, push me out the door. So,
Questions? Should we do questions now? Yep. There's a microphone in the back. No, I don't.
14 months left. How many stayed?
20, 21, something like that. It was like Joshua fighting the Battle of Jericho, you know, made them think there was a whole lot more of us than they really were. Started banging on pots, making a lot of noise all over the place. When I say go, go, it was just, so it's the same thing.
We have a question from a rather large group of people watching on the Zoom webinar. One is from somebody who hasn't met you, but asks whether the 4 values, which are kindness and community and what, 4 pillars?
4 pillars.
4 pillars. The question is, have they ever failed you, those 4 pillars?
So if you don't know, the pillars are community, leadership. Yeah, somebody talked about guidance before. We do face-to-face talk therapy with kids with clinical psychologists on the property. Most of what you see in urban America as academic underachievement has 0 to do with intellect. It has to do with emotional noise that goes on and affects kids and gets in the way of their learning. So that's and the 4th thing we do is academics, in that order. in that order. The least important thing is academics. It'll take care of itself if you deal with those other issues: community, leadership, and tending to the heart of the kids. So we have a lot of kids in either one-on-one talk therapy or in groups, just like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, kids sitting in groups. Because one of the most surprising things is when you're suffering with an absent father, with a substance abusing person that you love, right? You think no one else knows what I'm living with. So just walking into a room and being able to say, you too, matters. It matters. So have they failed us? If they fail, they don't fail us. They may fail individuals, right? One of the words that you hear a lot from the kids is used to. Are you going to therapy? I used to. Yeah, but you got a mess now. And what you suffer from isn't going away. It's going to affect you at different points in your life in different ways. So you have to be alert to it. So Dr. Lamort, who's here, I mean, he'll get calls from people at 2 a.m. from college, or people that are in their 30s calling them at 2 a.m. because they feel they're going a little bit off the rails. So I don't think it fails the system. I think it may fail some individuals.
Mark, from your point of view as an educator, are there aspects of those 4 pillars that can be applied in public schools, in district schools, or in charter schools? I mean, not the whole St. Benedict's program, but any one aspect or 2 that really can be transferred?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them, actually. A little bit more about my background.
Not the pool.
Well, it depends. A little bit more about my background. I was a middle school teacher, but then was the founding principal of an alternative education high school here in the city of Newark, a traditional public high school, and then was part of a founding team of an alternative education charter school. What that means is we were serving young people 16 to 21 years old who had dropped out of school for any number of reasons, and we're re-engaging them in a pathway towards a high school diploma or equivalency diploma and workforce credentialing. The program was designed after what's called Youth Build. So Youth Build USA is a national youth development organization. Youth Build Newark has been here for 20 years, but it's basically youth development. It has its own model, but I understood it immediately because the tenets of a high quality youth development and youth leadership program are very similar. And so when I saw the things, they didn't call it convocation, but it was called morning meeting. They didn't call it the overnight. They called it mental toughness. They didn't, right? Like there was, the names changed, but the intention, the spirit, the goal that you're going for is the same. And I will tell you that we saw the biggest gains with young people because of the heart work, because of the leadership development. Young people would come to us from having been incarcerated, teenage parents. Over 20% of them were transient, homeless, didn't have a place to stay. Almost all of them were involved in some sort of gang or neighborhood organization from across the city. We would see huge gains from August to December. And those gains we saw overwhelmingly were because of the things we did that were couched in social emotional learning and all this jargon and titles. It was love. Simply, it was just love. We saw some more gains later in the year because of the academics. But the bulk of the gains came because for the first time, the young people were sitting there saying, I feel safe. I feel cared about. I feel like I can be vulnerable. I feel like I can trust the people here. And that's what gave us, the metrics that people care about on a, New Jersey Department of Education school report card. But those outcomes came because of those 4 pillars. And, Youth Build calls them something different, but it works just the same because it's just high quality youth development.
Margaret.
Yes, we have a question couched with a comment. My name's Margaret Stevens. I teach history at Essex County College in Newark. I'm a graduate of the Newark Public Schools. Full disclosure, I am an agnostic, more like atheist, but I just enrolled my first grader in St. Benedict's for second grade. I'm so excited. I can vouch for the fact that, I went to University High School in the 90s. I went through the gifted and talented program. I went through the best of what the Newark Public Schools had to offer in the 80s and 90s. My parents were college graduates, radicals from the 60s. They weren't playing. I was going to get a good education no matter what. And I got it. But going through high school, St. Benedict's was always the school where like the awesomest guys in the world went. You could never compete with it. And that's just me speaking as a girl. But I can say now at 46, and I teach full-time at Essex County College. I got a PhD from Brown. I've been from the bottom to the top. And I can say that the men who graduated from St. Benedict's in that period are just brilliant. They are strong. They are resilient. It is a legacy. When I see you, Father Ed, I see the abolitionist movement. I see the Underground Railroad. I see the history of anti-racist preachers and Christians who were so fundamental to making and freeing, such a pivotal role in the world that we achieved. And we're stepping so far back and losing so much of what we ever gained. And I'm curious to ask you this. Because I see how my school, how the public school system in general is failing in this current moment in deportation and what's happening to these young people who are facing crises and then expected to come to school when many of their parents can't drop them off anymore. So my very basic question to you as a parent whose child will be at your school in a few months is, what is St. Benedict's plan for ICE, for Minneapolis coming to Newark? How are you guys planning to address this period in history that is eventually going to reach our doors?
When I went to St. Benedict's, there was Irish, but there was a large Italian population when I was at Benedict. So my best friends, lots of them were Italian. So I'm not sure I want to answer what we're doing to protect the kids, to protect our families, because I'm not sure I want ICE to know what we're doing. But what you mentioned about all of our kids in the city, it's a real problem. Kids are afraid they're going to go home and find their parents not there. I can tell you that one of the things that's been going on recently is they've been avoiding going into schools or going into churches. But if you're undocumented in the country and have been here for a while, overstaying a visa, the odds are you've created some success, right? And being able to support a family and all that kind of thing. Well, then you have to get to work. So what they're doing is following cars, because they can identify the license plate with the owner and then know whether that's somebody they're looking for. So we've told our parents, be careful about driving your own car to work. Ride with somebody, ride a bicycle, slide on your belly, do whatever you have to do. But sadly, that's one thing that's going on presently. Now, I have a meeting. If you call me, I can better give you some tips, because I know the mayor is trying to be reserved about the whole thing, for the incident that happened with the two kids got injured yesterday, and the stupidity. Our own cops can't chase somebody in town, but they can come in and do it. So I have a meeting tomorrow with some people. So if you want to give me a call, I can give you some better ideas of what might be helpful to you.
All right, Father, let's finish up with just flipping ahead and looking to the future. You started in 73 with 89 kids. You're now responsible for over 1,000 K through 12 boys and girls. Do you foresee continuing to grow in Newark? outside the city? And what constraints will you face?
So we're already outside the city. We have a early stages of a growing relationship with a tiny school in Newburgh, New York. That the grades 5 to 8, mostly relatively recent immigrants, most of them Mexican, I think. And it happened again by chance. So more to come on how that develops. We do a lot of work with, believe it or not, with former people in our special operations part of our military, so Navy SEALs. And the SEALs talk about FOBs, right? A forward operating base. It's a place where you can establish yourself and be of assistance to the people in that area. So we're open to that, the FOBs, right? To create different places where we might be able to be of assistance. It's a part of the monastic history in the world. When monastery got to be a certain size, they sent small groups to another place to start something else there. So as I said earlier, we were in Newark, established in the 1840s, 1927. Prior to that, we created St. Anselm Abbey up in Manchester, New Hampshire. When that became independent, we bought the property in Morristown and created Delbarton. And then they eventually become independent. So right now we're talking in Newburgh with a school that will likely become more than affiliated, a responsibility of ours as the years go by.
Any other questions?
The last comment from them, but if I can shape it, but Mark, Anthony, you can overrule this. How do you think Newark is different for the school being reopened and serving the youth of Newark over the last 50 years? Is Newark, what difference do you think you've made to the city as a whole?
You want me to, I say this with pride because I don't think it, and I say this also because I don't think it's interesting to me how much the bad stuff about Newark gets out, how easily it gets, how quickly it spreads. But I'll share some things with you that most people don't know about Newark. In the last 12 years, Newark has reduced homicides by 72%. I'll give you the hard numbers. In 2013, Newark had the 3rd highest murder rate in the country, and we had 112 homicides. That was 2013. Last year, we had 31. When you talk to a statistician, they will tell you that that's about, conservatively, about 500 people living today because of the reduction in homicides in this city. Actually, overall crime in the city is down 52%. Graduation rates, high school graduation rates are up in this city. Every crime indicator is down, except for theft from auto. And theft from auto is up because people leave things in their cars, or like their car keys with the car on when they run into the store and then stuff is missing. That stuff doesn't, it just doesn't make the news that way. There is a ton of work that the mayor has done in the public safety ecosystem, but you don't reduce crime in a city by those numbers with just one part of an ecosystem of the city. It requires some cross-sector work happening. That includes a more thriving education ecosystem, which includes the impact of places like St. Benedict's. And so, this city is and has been going through a transformation. I said what I mentioned earlier about what Halsey Street used to look like, and how much that has changed. Our mayor, who's been now, is a son of this city and has been in office now for a decade. A lot of that is accredited to him being the son of Amiri Baraka, and what that means about just the DNA of activism and agitation and progressiveness. So I think I'm interested to hear what Father Ed says, because he's a little or a lot older than me. But the city has changed, and has changed for the better. And Benedict's is a part of one of those variables for why this city has changed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Mark. The city has changed radically. Just look at the skyline and the buildings that are being built. People aren't building those buildings because to lose money. So that's one indication. Just a follow-up comment on the question about immigration that was asked. If you call me tomorrow, I'll start singing a spiritual and you figure out what to do. Wading in the waters.
Well, for me, if I were to describe the change in the city, I think I would go back to 2020, after George Floyd, when so many other cities in this country that had a history of racial problems went up in flames again, and there was an expectation that it was going to happen here, and it didn't. And I think the reason it didn't has a lot to do with the sense of community that has developed. How much of that comes from an institution that's been around for 150 years and people like Mark and the other alumni who have remained in the city, who have brought that sense of community, that sign that's over the entrance to the school that you see every day, whatever hurts my brother and now sister hurts me. And I think applying that to the community itself is an enormous change. And from that, a lot of other things will derive in the future. As we end now, I would like to take a minute to recognize some of the people in the audience who have helped so much over the course of the last couple of years when I was doing the book. And in fact, some of them are in the book, maybe starting with the alumni, both alumni from the reimagined school in 1973 and the alumni from before, who have been so important in supporting the school, getting it on its feet, and continuing success. So maybe stand up for a minute, all the alums. Yeah. Of course, the school gave me a badge, an identification card, so I got in and walked around like, I belong there, even though I didn't, right? And there were lots of people who helped in the monastery and also on the staff, the people who were there every day, the people I saw working from 7:30 in the morning and earlier, all the way through the evening. Whatever I got there, there would be people there, including that 6 days that I was on the trail. And there were some of these guys who were there as well. So for the staff, you guys over there, stand up, because as Father said, so, well, not just them, who else? There's more staff.
Those people in the back, Stan, they
Yeah.
see. You're in the,
Yes. All right. And then let's see, there are a couple of students who are students now or just recently graduated. And I want to express a thanks to you and to your families for opening up your life. It's not easy to do that in a book that's going to be there, well, forever, pretty much. And I'm coming in from outside asking all kinds of nosy questions. And I have to say that the kids really impressed me with their ability to open up and to relate and to want to express their feelings about the school. In fact, the alumni did that, the staff did that, the monks did that. It was an unusual situation for me to have that kind of access. So for the students here, it's mostly Mark's family and Jaden. And is that your brother? Yeah, stand up. All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming.
Just a reminder that Source of Knowledge Bookstore is hung around. So if you do not yet have a copy, and I think you might be willing to sign a couple more, Anthony. But let's give a good round of applause for him. Thank you.
And When, Tim, when will it be on the, on YouTube? When will it be streamed on YouTube? And when will it be available and how do they get it?
It's, how quickly they get it to me in a couple days.
Couple of days.
And I'll make sure you have it and you can share with the St. Benedict
Will do.
community.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mark and Father Ed.